In 2024, Mount Everest experienced one of its most dangerous climbing seasons ever. Overcrowding, extreme weather, and tragic incidents tested climbers like never before. From avalanches and deadly winds to oxygen shortages and fatal bottlenecks in the death zone, Everest became a nightmare for many. Global warming revealed hidden hazards, claiming more lives and changing the face of climbing on the world's highest peak. The season started as usual at Everest Base Camp. But this year, there were significant changes. The Nepali government banned all business ventures at the camp to preserve the seriousness of the experience. Without the cafes and bars that had become common, climbers had to focus entirely on survival in the challenge ahead. Despite a slight reduction in the number of permits issued, overcrowding remained a huge problem. The narrow pathways and limited weather windows created dangerous bottlenecks, especially at key points like the Khumbu Icefall and Hillary Step. These delays forced climbers to spend more time in the death zone, where the risk of altitude sickness and other dangers increased dramatically. One of the most tragic incidents occurred on May 21st. Daniel Paul Peterson, a 39-year-old mountaineer from the UK, and his 23-year-old Nepali guide, Penny Sherpa, successfully summited Everest. But their descent would prove fatal as they navigated the harsh conditions that define the mountain's most dangerous areas. As they approached the infamous Hillary Step, a narrow and nearly vertical section of Everest that has broken even the most seasoned climbers, the duo braced for the challenge. But as they began their descent, disaster lurked. The narrow path was packed with climbers, all desperate to make it down safely. The ice underfoot was fragile, cracking with each step. Suddenly, without warning, a massive overhang of snow, a cornice, collapsed beneath them. In an instant, the mountain trembled. The ground gave way. Peterson and Penji plummeted down the deadly sheer face of the Kangshung side of Everest. The fall was catastrophic, sending them tumbling thousands of feet into one of the most treacherous, unreachable areas on the mountain. Rescue was nearly impossible. Eyewitnesses stood in horror, helpless as the two climbers vanished into the abyss. A rescue team, led by experienced Sherpas Nenji and Pazin, quickly leaped into action, managing to save several others caught in the chaos near the Hillary Step. But despite their efforts, reaching Peterson and Penji was beyond hope. The mountain had claimed 2 more lives. Tragically, they weren't the only ones. In 2024, 8 climbers lost their lives on Everest, all clients of Nepali expedition companies. This sparked serious concerns about the safety practices of some operators. Shockingly, in the past 2 years, 23 climbers who died were tied to Nepali companies, an alarming 88% of the total fatalities. This raised unsettling questions about the qualifications of guides and the level of care provided. The Nepali government had introduced new rules to improve safety, but many were ignored. Commercial pressures pushed inexperienced climbers onto the mountain, creating dangerous overcrowding and increasing the risk of accidents. One controversial new rule in 2024 was the requirement for all climbers to carry electronic tracking chips to aid in rescues. But the idea quickly proved flawed. The devices needed bulky detectors, which helicopters couldn't carry above 23,000 feet, where most rescues were needed. To make matters worse, a new ban on helicopters for non-emergency purposes, like moving gear to Everest Base Camp, added logistical nightmares. There weren't enough yaks to transport the equipment, causing delays. And despite the ban, reports surfaced of climbers using helicopters to retreat from high winds, blatantly ignoring the rules. Even with these failures, the season saw the introduction of drone technology. The Nepali government experimented with drones like the DJI Flycart 30, designed to carry heavy loads at extreme altitudes. They were used to reduce the risk for Sherpas, especially in dangerous sections like the Khumbu Icefall. But the question remains, are these changes enough to keep Everest's deadly grip from tightening further? Drones successfully transported oxygen canisters and supplies from base camp to higher camps, and even brought trash back on their return flights. This technology was a major advancement in mountaineering logistics, potentially reducing the risks faced by Sherpas. But this progress came with controversy. Was it another step towards the commercialization of Everest? Was the mountain losing its wild, untamed nature in the face of advancing technology? While drones might have lightened the physical load, the mental and emotional strain on climbers, and guides remained as intense as ever. The relentless advance of global warming was transforming Everest into an increasingly deadly and unpredictable environment. In 2024, the notorious Khumbu icefall became a terrifying ordeal. This shifting river of ice and snow had been growing more unstable each season. But this year, the situation reached a breaking point. Warmer temperatures had weakened the ice, causing it to crack and collapse more frequently, turning the icefall into a deadly maze of falling debris and widening crevasses. The icefall doctors, an elite team of Sherpas tasked with carving a path through this treacherous terrain, faced an almost impossible challenge. Since mid-March, they had struggled to establish a safe route through the icefall, only to be repeatedly thwarted by massive ice boulders and unstable terrain. Their usual path was no longer viable, and the ice was simply too dangerous. Determined, the icefall doctors turned to an older, less used route along the western spur of the icefall. This route was longer and more complex, with its own set of dangers, but it was the only option left. The Sherpas worked tirelessly, laying ladders across yawning crevasses and fixing ropes along precarious ice walls. The tension was palpable, with every move potentially triggering a deadly collapse. Weeks of anxious waiting at base camp followed, as climbers were unable to begin their acclimatization at higher camps, putting their entire expeditions at risk. Every day without progress meant another day lost in the narrow window of time for a successful summit. Finally, on April 17th, after more than a month of grueling work, the icefall doctors managed to open the route up to Camp 2. The news brought relief, but it was tempered by the knowledge of how close they had come to disaster. As the 2024 climbing season continued, the full impact of global warming on Everest became glaringly obvious. Glaciers that had once been formidable barriers were now receding at a frightening pace. The South Col Glacier, for example, lost ice that had taken over 2,000 years to form in just 25 years. This rapid melting not only exposed dangerous crevasses, but also revealed rocks and boulders hidden beneath layers of ice. Climbers found themselves navigating a constantly changing landscape where the ice was increasingly unstable. In early May, a horrifying incident unfolded in the Khumbu icefall that nearly claimed the lives of a group of Sherpas. The day began like any other, with the icefall doctors carefully navigating the perilous terrain. But suddenly the ground beneath them shifted. A massive serac, a towering block of ice, started to break away. With a thunderous crack, the serac gave way, sending a wall of ice and snow crashing down the slope. The Sherpas, seasoned and battle-hardened, quickly recognized the signs of an impending collapse. In a desperate race against time, they had to escape the falling debris. Moving with remarkable speed and precision, they relied on their years of experience to navigate through the chaos, dodging boulders and icy wreckage as the icefall collapsed around them. The icefall, massive and terrifying, unleashed its fury. Ice the size of cars came crashing down, narrowly missing the Sherpas as they scrambled for safety. Snow and ice engulfed the area, blinding them as they fought to escape the chaos. The avalanche roared past, and somehow the Sherpas emerged shaken, but miraculously unharmed. Yet the aftermath was a scene of utter devastation. Tons of ice and snow had obliterated the route they had painstakingly prepared. But the dangers on Everest in 2024 didn't end there. The weather became more unpredictable, causing chaos for climbers. In past years, relatively stable weather had guided their ascent. But this season, high winds and sudden storms delayed the setting of fixed ropes through the icefall and up the mountain. Frustration mounted among climbers, who had already spent weeks at base camp acclimatizing to the altitude. This season also brought a disturbing new twist. Allegations of sexual misconduct within the Everest guiding community emerged. Nurul Peria, better known as Nims Dai, one of the most renowned mountaineers, faced accusations from two female clients, one Finnish and one American. They accused Nims of sexual harassment. Though he denied the claims, the accusations sparked a wider discussion about the toxic culture within the Everest guiding industry. The Department of Tourism in Nepal launched an investigation, but the outcome remained uncertain. As the season progressed, the challenges only grew. High winds caused delays, and when climbers finally reached the summit, they faced dangerous delays on the narrow summit ridge. Overcrowding forced climbers to wait in line to stand on the highest point on Earth. This not only increased the risk of altitude sickness and hypothermia, but also complicated rescue operations. In the death zone, every second counts, and too many climbers could block rescue teams. When the summit window finally opened, it was like a floodgate. Climbers who had been waiting rushed to take advantage of the calm, creating a bottleneck on the narrow ridge. As they waited, many experienced the onset of altitude sickness, headaches, nausea, and dizziness. The most insidious danger was the lack of oxygen. Some climbers, like Kenyan Chuo Kirui, chose to climb without supplemental oxygen, viewing it as the ultimate test of endurance. Kirui, who had summited Mount Kenya over 10 times, sought to push his limits on Everest, but the gamble cost him his life. As Kirui reached the summit, he felt a fleeting sense of triumph. However, the thin air above 8,000 meters took its brutal toll. Kirui began to exhibit severe hypoxia, a condition where the body is starved of oxygen. His Sherpa guide, Nawang Sherpa, tried to help, but it was too late. Disoriented and weak, Kirui slipped into a deep crevasse, disappearing from view. Nawang, struggling with the same deadly conditions, lost contact and was unable to reach him. The next morning, Kirui's lifeless body was found just a few meters below the summit. The tragedy of Kirui's death was compounded by the grim realities that Everest was revealing. As global warming thinned the snow and ice, the mountain's death zone began to give up its dead. Frozen bodies of climbers from past years, once entombed in glaciers, were now emerging from their icy graves. These eerie corpses, still clad in colorful gear, became haunting landmarks along the path to the summit, a chilling reminder of the mountain's lethal history. Despite these harrowing signs, climbers pressed on, driven by their relentless pursuit of the summit. As the season drew to a close, it became clear that Everest was at a crossroads. The combination of global warming, overcrowding, and commercialization had fundamentally altered the Everest experience. The dream of summiting the world's highest peak was overshadowed by the harsh realities of the mountain. The risks were greater, the rewards more elusive, and the future of Everest more uncertain than ever. The 2024 season will be remembered not just for its tragedies, but for the pressing questions it raised about Everest's future. Can the mountain continue to bear the weight of so many climbers, or will it become too dangerous to ascend? Will the guiding industry reform to prioritize safety over profit, or will the pursuit of Everest's summit continue to claim lives? These questions loom large as the climbing community reflects on a season that changed Everest forever.